kind of like one of those, like, you know, that analogy where it's like life has to be piece by piece, because if you saw the whole thing, you would never say yes.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because if you
I like
knew
that.
all the things you were going to have to say no to, all the things you'd have to say yes to, all the decisions that we would say no to everything because it's a lot of hard work. And it's, you know, at times, like I was just saying, like it's mentally strenuous and difficult and confusing. If I had seen the whole picture, I probably wouldn't have chosen what I'd chosen. I couldn't have made it happen myself.
Hi, guys. Welcome to Response Able with Professor Nikki James. I mean, louder is better in my opinion.
I think so.
Because then we can yell. I feel like I have a fake loud voice. Because if I actually screamed right now, I would be super loud. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I hope your week is going well. Today, I get to introduce you to one of the most joyful, loving, and kind people that I'm fortunate enough to have in my life. And her name is Emily Snowberger. Emily is full of love and passion and joy and all the good things. And honestly, if she knows you, she loves you. It's just automatic. She has come to my classes many times. So some of you may have met Emily before or heard her story, but she shares some really great wisdom in this podcast that I hope that you can learn from and take and apply to your own life. And also today, I'm welcoming back Nora Shepard, who has been on the podcast before. She has come back as a guest host with me today. So let's jump into this episode with Emily Snowberger and Nora Shepard. Emily Snowberger, welcome.
Hi.
I'm so excited to have you here. I can honestly say that out of all of the people that come to my class as guests, you're the one that gets talked about the most. I also, funnily enough, have heard you on many, many podcasts.
Yes.
Because there are a few of my classes that have to do podcasts with people working in impact. And Emily gets lots of requests after she does this talk in my class. And then I surprisingly just press play on an assignment that I'm grading, and I get to hear Emily's lovely story.
Like, I can't get rid of this woman.
No, it's always delightful. And honestly, I had to start working out how to tell the difference that you're just really good at telling the story versus that they're great at asking questions. So it's been a good time. But thank you so much for yet again coming and jumping on a podcast. It won't just be me that hears it this time, which is really exciting. And then also tonight we have the lovely Nora Shepard back making a cameo with us. So welcome.
I definitely agree that you're a memorable guest and just have a great energy that I think is inspiring. It makes sense that a lot of people have reached out to interview you for their assignments. I remember that assignment too. And it's like, who in the world am I going to pick?
Yeah. No,
Thank you, guys.
It's great. You're always willing to share and always willing to come. And now, like, even my South African students are going to get to hear your story, which I'm really excited about. So yeah, it would be really great if you could tell us a little bit about who you are. Wherever you want to go with that is up to you.
Goodness. Okay, well, hi, everybody. My name is Emily Snowberger. I feel like this is always such a funny question because there's a million different ways that I could go with this, but I'll give just a little snippet. Grew up in Seattle, Washington, have an incredible family, one of 6 kiddos, crazy, loud, big, wonderful family. I studied in Sydney, Australia for 7 years, studied theology, studied business, did a few things down there, kicked off my marketing career, and currently live in Boston. Been here for 3.5, almost 4 years, which is pretty amazing. Still in the marketing space, doing things that I love around people that I love. And I've actually quite fallen head over heels with Boston in and of itself, which has been really sweet. So yeah, I'm here for the long haul, I think, which is exciting.
Yay. It's so good. Boston is so lucky to have you. And you have a bit of a side hustle as well, which I really appreciate.
I do. Guys, here's the thing. I when I think back to like when I was younger, I remember thinking when I was a kid, I was like, I don't feel very artistic was one thing that I didn't think I was when I was younger because I couldn't paint or draw or do certain things that I would be like, that is what an artist is. But I remember as a little kid, I had this thought where I was like, I don't know how to do those things, but I feel like I'm good at like putting stuff together. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like I'm good at like,
Curation.
Yes, like I was always that kid that was like rearranging my room and
You
like,
know what looks good.
yes. And I remember thinking like, what a pointless skill. That's so funny. I'm never gonna get. That's never gonna be put to use for anything. Let alone I do that now for my job. But my side hustle is I do interior design, and I collect mid-century furniture, and I refurbish things and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, it's kind of been this like when I moved to Boston, I brought nothing with me from Sydney. And I call this like one of my series of happy accidents in life is that I needed to buy furniture because I didn't have anything. And I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. I'm going to follow the aesthetic that I love. I'm going to do it. To which then led me to having a house full of furniture, but I kept finding things that I loved and very big on like sustainability. So like everything's like secondhand and vintage and X, Y, and Z. And I was like, this is so beautiful. I just want other people to find this as well. And so then the easiest way to do that was for me to like curate and sell and have clients now. And I do some interior design for people when they move and all kinds of fun stuff and still fill my house with more things than probably I need, if I'm being honest. But yeah, I love it. And it's like been such a fun additional thing as being a remote person as well to like have a creative outlet that's so physical and with people here in Boston has been a treat. So yeah.
So you are artistic after all.
I am. Gosh, who would have known? You know what I mean? Yeah, it's funny because that moment for me was like so pivotal when I was young. And it's like hilarious because that's like affected in so many positive ways, like my career and so many of my things outside of my work, I would say are deeply creative. But in my brain as a kid, I was like, if you can't paint or draw, you don't do art. Like,
I know. I feel like part of maturing is realizing like how much art is and like how much is everywhere in our lives.
And it's not just whatever the art teacher comes and makes you do
exactly.
each week in elementary school, right?
Too.
Yeah, it's so funny. And like, it's like when you're a kid, like you kind of everybody has like a little box that you kind of get put in where like you're really good at this sport, or you're really good at X, Y, and Z. My siblings and I talk about this and how like part of like getting older is kind of realizing like, like that is true. But also outside of the box are all these other things that maybe weren't like deemed as being like super noticeable when you were a kid that then are like actually really like important to you. I feel like getting older is just realizing all the things that didn't fit in the box that you were also kind of just in when you were younger and being like, oh my gosh, wait, maybe I am actually artistic. It just isn't what I thought. Or maybe I am good at this thing and I had no idea. I don't know. It's been my experience at least.
Or the realization of like, no, I'm not super athletic, but I'm super nice. And when you're a kid, sometimes people like, you don't get put in a box and you're like, what the heck? And then you grow up and you're like, wait, I'm really, really grateful that I have this quality. Sometimes when you don't have like your thing, it can be hard to identify.
Wait, no, I actually resonate with that. I resonate with
resonating.
Because it's so funny. Like my whole family played sport growing up. So like everybody was a soccer player. That was like all my siblings went really far. They're really good at it. I love soccer, but I don't have a competitive bone in my body. And so I was quite
I can attest to that.
Yeah,
that
I was literally there for the halftime hangs and like, oranges and like friends and kicking a ball around. I was not really there to like win. So a lot of my life growing up, I was like I do music, but I'm not like I'm not like crazy. I play sports, but I'm not like, and all I remember thinking is like, I think I'm like just okay with people. You know what I mean?
Exactly,
like I feel like I just really love people. And again, I felt like, I hope that's helpful.
Yes. Especially right now, being a people person with a lot of the isolation that we deal with, definitely good to be a kind, nice people person that you both are.
Trying to be.
Trying to be. We all have our days. So what are you doing for work now? So aside from the side hustle, which I'm sure is taking more and more of your time bit by bit, but what is the job that is the main focus of your life right now?
Yes. So I love this because actually my job is like one of my biggest passions in life. And I'm really lucky because I've gotten to meld my profession alongside my passion. But currently, my role is I'm a director of marketing communications for a nonprofit called A21 that specializes in anti-human trafficking work across the globe. So we've got offices across North and South America, Europe, Africa, Southeast Asia, Australia. I have team all over the globe with a sole mission of like wanting to eradicate modern day slavery from every corner of the globe. And I've been doing that now for almost 4 years, so almost the entirety of my time here in Boston. And again, that is one of those happy accidents for me. So I can go into even if just a little bit around how I got there, but I grew up in a business family and really liked business for other people, but didn't really see myself in the business world at all. I went to university on the younger side because in Seattle, you can go to university if you're 16 and you want to. And I studied business, I was like 16 or 17 going to university, which is kind of crazy when I think about that right now. And that's a really normal thing. That's not like abnormal in Seattle. It's like very normal. And started studying business when I was younger, had my first job in business when I was also studying as well. And I feel like it was probably a combination of being like too young and also not the best environment. It kind of gave me a bit of a bad taste of like what the business world was like. And I remember thinking like, oh, if this is the business world, like I don't really see myself in it. Went down to Sydney, studied, loved it, was working in fashion actually for many years when I was studying doing styling and creative direction on photo shoots, and kind of ended up in this really creative world while I was studying, and I loved it. And it felt like there was all this momentum in that world. I thought maybe I'd stay kind of in the fashion industry, and ended up pivoting really hard. Got my first job in marketing for a university actually down in Sydney. And they needed somebody who was a writer and could project manage in marketing. Both of those things, I was like, I'm a strong writer. Got proof of that within my previous jobs. And I project managed for these, photo shoots, X, Y, and Z. They kind of took a chance and offered me the job. And when I was in that role, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I never really thought about marketing. Like I'd had such a bad first experience that I just kind of blocked out everything in the business world, to be honest with you, and was like, absolutely not. And I found myself in this role and with this team that I was like, why do I feel like there's all these interesting qualities in myself that make sense for the marketing world? The weird knack for storytelling that, again, felt like a pointless skill. All this writing that I love doing, the ability to put things together and curate things, the ability to, I can't do graphic design, but I can tell somebody what I want in it. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not able to do that myself, but I can direct and advise.
Right.
And,
You can put it together.
I can put it together, right? A skill that seemed so pointless all started to make sense. And I worked for that same company, that same university for many, many years, got into management, and then was able to start my role with A21 after years of loving A21 and supporting their work and advocating for them since literally being a little girl when I first heard about them. And it kind of was a serendipitous moment of coming back to the States, and they had a role that was open and the stars kind of aligned. And ever since then, that's been what I do. And so I look after all of their global marketing and communications with an amazing team, their branding, their campaigns, the strategy, the day-to-day, the analytics. So I get to wear a few different hats, but I love what I do.
Amazing. That's a bit of a journey.
It is a journey.
It is
Yes.
a bit of a journey. So we've got like high school, your first toes dipped in university and business. We have a job were you in marketing when you had that first job in business, or were you in finance or something?
I was like a marketing assistant for like a really big graphic design firm in Seattle.
Okay, so you were in marketing, but probably not doing the bits that made your little heart sing.
No, and it was just a very, very chaotic environment, and not a very gracious environment. It was very, some of that is like business is what it is, but there was just certain things about that I don't think I understood was like not necessarily reflective of lots of different places. But yeah, it was a very interesting kickstart for sure.
Right. So what are some of the key lessons that you think you learned, or those moments where you kind of went, there's a moment there along that journey?
Yeah, well, I think for me, what was really apparent ever since I was young, and this is a shout out to my parents, my family, and just the way that I was raised, but we were always involved in a lot of causes growing up. Like we sponsored children, we packed shoeboxes for Samaritan's Purse, and we did a lot of local work with elderly communities and the homeless communities in our cities and stuff like this. So from a really young age, there was a really big value instilled in me that like we're put on this planet to do good. Like that's kind of if I can sum it into like one statement, that would be like the one thing. We're there to like care for people and do as much good as humanly possible. And so from a really young age, I just knew I wanted to make a positive impact in some way, shape, or form. And I think what was awesome about my role when I got into the education space is like my mom was a teacher. I believe in education wholeheartedly and have, had access to really great education, fortunately, in my life. That was one of the first times I felt like I was making a difference through communication and marketing, if that makes sense. I was helping students study abroad for the most part, but get into programs and choose what was lining up with their passions, what they wanted to do. And it was one of the first few times where I was like, oh, wait a minute. No, like marketing and communications is not always just about telling people they need things that maybe they don't need. Right? Because I think that was the yucky feeling for me was like overconsumption is such a huge problem. And I feel weird about telling people they need something that maybe you don't actually need. Maybe you don't need that 100th pair of shoes. Maybe you don't, maybe you don't need this one product that's promising you that you're going to be, 25 pounds lighter. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just had so many moral questions around like, what do I feel comfortable telling people they should have or influencing people to do? And so when I was working for the school, it was one of the first times where I saw, oh no, like marketing making an impact in a positive way in people's lives. And it made me go, no, I could do this for a really long time. I just think I want to do it in a way that feels like it's making a positive impact. And now getting to do that in the anti-human trafficking space, that's amplified 10 times more, especially because that's been a cause so close to my heart since I was young. That for me has been the light bulb moment of like, oh, it wasn't that this area was wrong. It's just I didn't understand how it could have such a positive, amazing impact across the globe. And now I'm getting to do that. And that was a huge game changer for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love the little light bulb moments where you're just like, oh, I get it now.
Yes. It was truly like a light bulb moment. Like I remember sitting on my little train coming home in Sydney and just being like, wait a minute.
I think that's a really good lesson though too. Nikki, I know you have a lot of students who are starting their job search listening to the podcast. And I think marketing does get a weird reputation. I also work in marketing right now, not in a nonprofit. Like I'm doing other things, but it's a lot more technical and I'm learning so much more than I ever thought I would. And not that it's for everyone and people can take all sorts of paths, but I know a lot of people in your classes are super curious about so many things, but sometimes marketing gets like ruled out for no real reason because we kind of just think it's like this thing that it might not be.
Yeah.
But I would say to people who are listening or just in their job search, like definitely consider it. And I think there's so many things you can learn. And like Emily just said, you can use it for good in so many ways.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate that because, it's so true. Like, it's kind of funny. Like, there's a stereotype of being like a marketing girl. Like, oh, you're just a marketing girl. Like, it's social media. It's like, hee hee ha ha. Like, it's like, not that serious, not this whatever. Where I tell people, I'm like, no, like, the things that are encompassed within my role are not just like specific to the organization just because I work in a nonprofit and you wear many hats. But the marketing leaders that I look up to and respect, I mean, you're holding strategy, you're holding the creative elements, you're holding a team, you're holding the analytics and the data. Like especially if you're in a senior leadership role of some kind, it is so far from just like, oh, like, just like
I
this
know, I'm like, these people are ballers. Like, they're doing everything. It's how I feel. And I didn't learn that until I was actually in it.
Well, or what was interesting, I was just reading an article the other day that was talking about the number one need for companies is any roles around storytelling. People are actively searching for storytellers. And I was reflecting, this was another aha moment of recent where I was like, when I was a kid, my parents used to always laugh and be like, you always have so many stories all the time. Like you come home from school and you have like 1,000 stories about all the funny things that happened from the day. Like I've never met somebody who's like so enthused by like horrible things. And it was always kind of like, they weren't trying to be negative about it, but it was kind of definitely like, I'm sure I annoyed them about it. But they would always be like, you just like, girl, you are a girl with a million stories, they always say. And it's like hilarious because like now I literally get paid to be a storyteller. As like, that's like one of my biggest roles within what I do.
Yeah.
It's like figuring out how we tell the story. How do you tell the story from data? How do you tell the story to different audiences?
Right.
How do you talk about a global crisis in a way that makes sense for people and doesn't overwhelming and burdensome, but like people feel inspired and like activated on it. And so, yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's very different than what people think it's going to be.
There you go. Give it a try.
Give it a try.
Who knows?
Shameless plug for marketing.
So funny. You mentioned that you got really passionate about human trafficking or anti-human trafficking. I need to make sure I put the anti in there.
Yes, I'm very passionate about human trafficking.
Yeah. Anti-human trafficking.
Yeah.
At a really young age. And I guess you started working in that area when you kind of relocated to Boston. So there's quite a significant gap in the time where you were like, this is a thing that I love. And you got to actualize that in a career that did produce your ability to live, aka a salary. How did you keep attached and engaged and passionate about that thing in the meantime, not even knowing there would be a day where you would get to actually do that as a job?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I mean, to give a little bit more there as well too, I'd heard about anti-human trafficking. I actually heard about A21, the organization that I work with, at the same time when I was 11 years old. So somebody had come to an event that I was at. They were sharing around the problem, and they had actually shared a story of a girl who was about my age. And I grew up in Seattle, where actually human trafficking is a pretty rampant problem because it's a gateway to Southeast Asia. You can get from Canada to Mexico on the 405 freeway. Like, it's kind of this portal into a lot of trafficking that happens between, Canada, Mexico, Southeast Asia, America. It's very wild. And so it was a very prevalent problem that I saw and heard about at a young age. But I remember the person who introduced the topic, her name was Beck. And she was one of the first people I'd ever heard talk about something so heinous and like so dark and so terrible, but I didn't feel scared afterwards, especially as a kid. It's really easy to feel scared. I mean, it's easy to feel scared now as a grown-up, to be honest. But I remember not feeling scared. I remember feeling really like hopeful by the way that she was talking about it, because it was like, here's the problem. Here is the solution. Here's what you can do about it today. Right. And they were running this campaign with another organization called Change for Change, where it was all about pocket change, just donating your pocket change and making a difference in the world. And as a kid who had no finances, obviously at 11 years old, my parents' pocket change. Yeah. And I had, like little spare change of X, Y, and Z. And I had a little cup that I would fill with the quarters and the pennies and the dimes and all this stuff from the $10 my dad would give me if I'd go out to, hang out with a friend on the weekend or something. And I remember feeling like, oh, I can do something about this, even at a young age. And that was so paramount for me, not feeling like overwhelmed and scared and anxious on the topic. And I went home that day when I heard about it, and I looked my mom dead in the eyes and I said, I'm going to do something about human trafficking one day. And she was like, okay, that's great. We love that. That's so special, like, great. And did it,
And look at you now.
Yes. Look at me now, Mom. No, but I pretty much all throughout middle school and high school, anybody who knows me, any of my friends would be able to tell you that this was like the topic that I talked about a lot. Did little fundraisers, did little advocacy, did what I could. I remember in high school thinking, all I really care about is making a difference, people, and anti-human trafficking work. And then I was also really involved in my church growing up. So that was another huge portion of like my life that I was really passionate about. But I was like, none of that really feels like a career of any kind. And I kind of felt like a little silly because all my friends wanted to be doctors or in business or go into sports or sport medicine. And I kind of felt like I don't really know what this means. I just know what I care about. And honestly, I felt kind of like a little ashamed a little bit because I was like, oh, I don't have this crazy big trajectory. I don't have this mad grand plan. And I kind of felt like I'd missed the boat a little bit because I went down, I studied, like I said, studied theology, did all these different things, followed a lot of stuff that I was really passionate about, and felt like I completely missed the boat a little bit. I had a portion when I was living in Sydney. I just graduated. where I kind of I was a little bit down in the dumps because I was like, I don't know I feel like I've done the right things. I've followed the things that I think I'm supposed to follow, but I just don't know how to get to there. And I would have never imagined that marketing would have been the vessel that would have gotten me to working in anti-human trafficking. I'm so grateful because, again, what a happy accident that is in my life. That wasn't the plan. I thought maybe I would work in anti-human trafficking when I was like in my 40s, when I was like in my 50s, like after I'd done a lot of different things. So I think for me, I mean, to answer your question, a lot of it was like I stayed attached to an organization that I cared a lot about, who I trusted and I knew was doing good work, stayed informed, stayed, passionate and connected. But then I was always just like, for me, staying informed on the topic was also really important because it's a crisis, so it's constantly evolving. And then just like not being discouraged by not doing enough, but just doing what I could and being okay with that, whether that was at times that meant donating, at times that meant having a conversation, at times that meant volunteering, at times that meant so many different things. And I volunteered with some local orgs in Seattle all throughout high school as well too, that worked with young girls coming out of trafficking and things. And so it has looked different in so many different seasons of my life. But now it's just cool that it's gotten to like be a part of my career and embedded in my everyday. But it looked like a million different things over that like 15-year span.
Yeah. I think that's really cool. That's kind of what the meaning to me of responsible is. We can't ever expect ourselves to do what we don't have the capacity to do. So you were doing what you could with the time, the resources and the skill sets that you had, and then that led to an opportunity.
Yeah.
But I think it's really interesting. It usually does lead to an opportunity, but you can't do it so that it leads to an opportunity. It's kind of one of those really kind of catch-22 interesting situations. It's like you can go, look, oh, I'm doing this to get here, to get here, to get here. It's never going to work that way. But if you kind of just let go and go, okay, I'm doing this job and making my life, and then slowly it's kind of evolving together. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, you're like, oh, wow, look how it worked out.
Yeah, I mean, and that's so true. Because I always tell people, I'm like, I couldn't have fabricated or like forced this to happen if I tried. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was, this is one of those things that to me, like, I just have to step back and be like, oh, I have a lot of gratitude for this because I would have never chosen. It's kind of like one of those, like, that analogy where it's like, life has to be piece by piece because if you saw the whole thing, you would never say yes.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because if you knew all the things you were going to have to say no to, all the things you'd have to say yes to, all the decisions that we would say no to everything because it's a lot of hard work. And it's, at times, like I was just saying, like it's mentally strenuous and difficult and confusing. If I had seen the whole picture, I probably wouldn't have chosen what I'd chosen. I couldn't have made it happen myself. But because it was one piece at a time, the only times I started to get overwhelmed was when I was trying to like grasp for more pieces than I could. You know what I mean? When I felt anxious and was trying to make something make sense of the things that were sitting in my hands, where when I would feel really overwhelmed, but when I started doing what I could, I would feel like more satisfied in some capacities or like, oh, okay, like I am doing something, I can do this today.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing 10 years from now, but I can do this today. And that practice, I would still say, applies to my life on a lot of different topics and has taught me a lot of just how to live more presently and how not to get overwhelmed. Because there's a lot of very overwhelming things that we're facing, especially right now. And that's something that I try to practice within other things, not just in my job, but in other areas that I care about too.
Yeah, that's so good. I think it's also really funny that you thought that this is something you'd be doing in your 40s.
Absolutely.
Because when I first heard that being a professor was a possible job, it was actually, I was working at the University of New South Wales, in Australia, and I met a 90-year-old economics professor. And the students loved him and he just loved being in front of the classroom. And I just had this moment of, oh, maybe being a professor will be my retirement plan. Like when I've done life, when I've done the career, maybe I'll get to do this really cool thing that looks really fun. And I got there just a little bit earlier than that
just
as well.
Same as you. Just a little bit.
Definitely not 90.
Only a few decades. Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
I told my students in class the other day about something that was created because I was telling them a story about being the youngest sibling and the youngest cousin and all that in my family. And I was like, oh, it was to the point where I got called this particular nickname. And this particular doll was created in the year I was born because my uncle used to call me Cabbage Patch until I was 30.
Oh my
like in my
gosh.
30s. But they were actually born in the year that I was born. And I said it and then I was like, don't calculate that.
Yeah, don't Google that,
But
please.
it's definitely not 90. It's definitely not in the I'm not in the 90s.
For everybody listening to this, you can Google that.
You probably can, but yeah. Some of my students would be quick math and they would have worked it out already. So,
what were you going to say?
I also think it's pretty cool bringing back the storytelling of just like doing what you could with what you had in the moment. That's how the topic of anti-human trafficking was originally presented to you.
Yes.
By Beck. So it's pretty cool that someone was able to present it in a way that wasn't overwhelming, that you were able to like keep it in your back pocket and be like, I care a lot about this. It wasn't shared with you in a way that made you be like, oh my gosh, this is too big of a problem. I can't do anything about it. It was shared with you in a way that it's a huge problem and you can have a really big impact. And that's kind of sounds like it's been a theme throughout the entire journey of getting here.
Oh no, for sure. And it's funny, I actually still know Beck and her family and things like this. We've kept in touch after all these years. And I've often said that to her of like, because she was, in her 30s talking to a group of middle school girls, right? And I think a lot of times we don't often get to hear the effects of our life on other people. And she's actually a Kiwi woman and her family moved back. And when I was living in Sydney, we'd gotten to see each other and I reached out to her when I got my job at A21. I could cry thinking about this. But I just was like, so much of our life, we don't get to see the effects that we have on other people. But like, I want you to know that like one conversation you had with me and that group of little girls has literally changed the entire trajectory of my life. And now 15, 16 years onward, I'm doing something because you said something to me. And I just want to say like, thank you. I want to tell you. And it's also, like you said, affected how I do my job because I want to replicate that same feeling for other people. I don't want you to feel overwhelmed and helpless and scared. I want you to feel informed and empowered and like you have a purpose and a part to play and not pressured, but like inspired, And so, yeah, it's probably one of the most influential things that's ever happened to me. And she was just doing her part. She didn't have $1 million to donate. She didn't have XYZ. She had a group of 11-year-old girls and was like, I think we raised like $200 or something, with all of our pocket change over a course of 6 months or something. And that seems small. It was not a small thing at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it invested a lot in all of your lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good. I love that. Okay. So if you could whisper in the ear of your 25-year-old self or that person, it might have been a different age because you mentioned that you started university and working young. Those times in your life, I know for a fact that have happened in your life where you were working all day and studying all night and basically going through the grind of getting where you are. So maybe one of those hard things that you would probably have said no to if you could see it all playing out. What would you say to yourself?
Ooh, I think I would encourage myself to like relentlessly follow what I know it to be important, like my values and the things that I knew that were driving me. Because I think there's a lot of things we are encouraged to pursue. We were even just talking about this before this podcast started around like turning everything that you love into like a side hustle or like monetizing every creative thing that you do. And none of those things are bad. But I think there was a lot of things I was being encouraged to pursue that I knew weren't quite myself. And it took a lot of, I say this humbly, but it took a lot of courage to say no to some of those things. Because it seemed kind of stupid. Do you know what I mean? Kind of seemed like, no, you should be doing this. This is the right thing to be doing. Like, this is what you need to do to set your life up. This is what you need to do X, Y, and Z. And I have a lot of really smart, kind, wonderful people in my life who cared. So there's a lot of, great advice being given. But I think a lot of my confusion and anxiety came from trying to pursue things that didn't quite feel right, you know? And also trying to do the things that felt important to me, trying to do both of them, doing too much at one time. I got pretty burnt out at one point in my life really early on and realized I cannot do that if I'm going to do what I want to do and do it sustainably. So I think I would just whisper back in younger self's ear, just, hey, like, like follow your gut sense on what you know to be important. It doesn't have to all make sense, and don't run yourself ragged justifying every decision that you're making to people. It'll make sense when it does, which seems so silly, but like it truly, I just think I knew, it was like, it's just going to, in time will tell. And it has. It really, really has. At least for me, that's a huge part of my story.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that. And last question for me, and then I'll leave the last question for Nora, and I'm just giving her a little bit of notice here so she can think about it. But when you look up into the future, doesn't matter what distance away, but what kind of things do you see?
It's actually so funny because that's a lot of what I'm doing right now, is like kind of taking a recall and a reevaluation of a lot of things in my life. I'm turning 30 this year. And so there's a lot of kind of like, big decade, looking back, looking ahead. I think for me, what I see is a lot of continuation of what I am doing. I think I feel really clear that whether or not this is my job in the exact way that it is right now, I will be in this cause for the long haul of my life in many different facets. And so for me, it's wanting to do as much good as I possibly can in my life. And that will probably look like anti-human trafficking work. I want to be more connected to my greater local community. That's one of my goals for this year, and the next future of what I want to do is some more volunteer work and advocacy work for my local community here in Boston and local causes. But I think for me right now, what I see is staying within a creative space like I'm in at the moment in time, trying to make a positive impact across the globe, and helping find a solution for human trafficking. Like, those are three things that feel really clear to me. How and when and how those are connected will probably look like a million different things by the time that I die. I want to go back to school as well too. I want to go back and continue studying. And at the moment, that's something I'm really, really passionate about. But then to have a family one day and make a positive impact on the world by having a strong, beautiful family. You know what I mean? And beautiful not as in like aesthetics, but beautiful as in like loving and kind and caring. You know what I mean? That's something that would be massive for me one day in the future. But yeah, there's a lot of different things right now, but it's something that I'm really contemplating a lot. I'm still kind of figuring out.
I'm excited to see it unfold.
Me too. Well, stay tuned.
Watch this space. Final question, Nora.
You talked about being involved in so many things, which might be part of your answer, and just caring about a lot of things. But something I'm curious about being early in my career is how you're not making your career your identity, even though you're super passionate about it. I'm just curious what you have to say about that, and how you kind of separate the two, like work life, how you think of that, because yeah, like I said, obviously you are super passionate about it and it is part of your life's mission. At the same time, it's your 9 to 5.
No, that's actually so funny. I was just having this conversation with some friends around a dinner table recently, because this is a hill I may actually die upon.
Wait for it.
Yes, is that I actually believe that no one thing needs to bear the pressure of all of your fulfillment in life. So like, your job cannot be your only outlet for like your mind, your creativity, your soul. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there has to be additional things outside of your job that you love, because it's kind of like putting pressure on your partner in life to be all your fulfillment of like social interaction. That's like just not feasible, possible, healthy. That's too much for one person to like fulfill, right? That's why we need friendships and family and all these different things. And that person plays a particular role, but they can't be all of that for you. So like, I'm a really big fan of like, you have to have some hobbies that you enjoy doing that like make you feel excited to end your day at 5:00, because you're going to go play pickleball, you're going to that art class, or you're going to your community theater, or whatever it might be that you're like really passionate about. So I'm really passionate about like there being additional things outside of the workplace that you care about. that you talk about with people. I think especially in America, Nikki, I feel like you can attest to this, like something that was a little bit surprising to me coming back because I spent so much of my formative years, end of teenager into my mid-20s in Australia, is how much people hear your key identifying factor is what you do for a job. Like the first two questions you get asked, hi, what's your name? What do you do? Is like one of the second questions you get asked in almost every conversation because that's just how we identify and categorize and do all these different things. And so I'm like very passionate around there being things that people know about you other than what you do for work. Your friends, your family, again, your hobbies, your passions. And so I've been really intentional. You guys heard me talk at the beginning about my little side hustle, but that's been a very intentional thing because it's a creative outlet that's not my job. And it's something that like is just fun that I really enjoy. I've also picked up painting over the last few years. I believe in making time for friendship. So I have a certain amount of times a week that I see people and I try to catch up with people and hear about their lives outside of their jobs. Like I said, I'm really, connected to my, community here in Boston, my church here in Boston. That's a huge outlet for me as well too. And a really big part of my mental wellness, even working within such a tough topic. And so, yeah, I've the healthiest people I know doing incredible things have so much balance in their life. And like actually something I was talking about with someone, I was like, one day I would have loved to have my own like company, like my own, like a local brand or something here in Boston, because I think it'd be so amazing to have like an outlet that's here, that's making a positive impact. That's not my 9 to 5, because some of the healthiest people I know like do things like that help everything else kind of like stay in order. Because if your job is the only thing that you are doing, it will creep into your 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. You are checking emails on the weekends. You are doing X, Y, and Z. And I just have learned that there's really almost nothing so urgent that's required other than once in a blue moon, And so having other things for me helps keep my job like in perspective. It's important. It's not everything. But there have been times, and I am guilty of this, where that has been far too much of my identity. I've been working too long of hours, X, Y, and Z, and I was a shell of a person. So I'm like, I've learned this because I've also done it wrong. You know what I mean? And had to get better.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And even on Dylan and Priya's episode, and just like my friends who are in post-grad, we're all learning that. But I think it's really validating to hear that from the get of like be involved in lots of different things. And that's actually not a threat to your career, but it's going to help you show up even better, more energized, and just like have more to talk about, even if it's at work and you're just like a more interesting person. It leads you to more places.
Absolutely. Or like I tell people all the time, I do a lot in the music space and I read. Those are like two things that are like pretty consistent in my day-to-day life. Both of those things make me a more well-rounded creative person. It increases my vocabulary. It gives me new narrative, archetypes to follow. Like when I'm doing those things, I'm actually best at my job. Does that make sense? Like when those things are happening, I am like top tier, like in what I do. When those things are not happening, I'm in like a creative lull and I suck. You know what I mean?
And it takes so much longer to do the things like to be creative if you're not feeling creative.
Yes.
So, yeah.
For sure. Or like if I'm not moving my body, if I'm not running, playing pickleball, seeing people, going on my walks, I am not the best. So like I've had to like kind of really check myself of like being the best is sometimes not the person who's like most solely focused. Does that make sense? I've got a lot of focus and diligence in my life, but like I think there's a lot of like, you have to like find your one thing and like become the best at that one thing and only do that one thing and like focus and this and hustle. And I've found that at least for me, I am my best when I'm more well-rounded, and all of those things get better because they're not bearing the pressure of being like all of my fulfillment. It's too much pressure.
Totally.
Too much.
So good. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for joining. Nora, thank you, because you are in the season of life that a lot of the people listening are in. So you have questions that are relevant to probably what they're sitting there asking as they're listening to your edits. And Emily, as always, thank you so much for being here, for sharing, for just being so open. I had more questions, but you are such a great communicator and storyteller. You kind of did answer a bunch of the questions. as you were answering the other ones. So I was like, check, check. So you were brilliant at what you
Thank
do,
you.
at storytelling, at making what you do seem possible, no matter how big the challenge is, and inspire so many other people. Especially, I see it in my classroom when you come in and you share. They might not necessarily light up about anti-human trafficking explicitly, but they light up going, oh, I can do something I'm passionate about. And that's amazing.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me and asking such good questions, and for just being interested and curious people about my world and what I've done. And you're an inspiration to me, Nikki. I love you and your class, and seeing you do what you do is one of the joys of my life. So thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Woohoo, we're done. Go team. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. And wow, Nora, what great questions. Thanks so much for joining me as a guest host today. And Emily, you're so wise and so kind and so loving. And we always learn. I always learn more about you every time I have a conversation. And I hope you all learned from her story. I think Emily lives a life of purpose without having to know how it's all going to play out in the future. And I think that takes a lot of courage to do, but I think it is something that if we can apply that posture to all of our lives, we will feel more free to be present in the moment and just do whatever is in our hand. So thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.